Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 870. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, habits. Doing work without thinking are the death of process improvement. Why does this matter? When your brain goes on autopilot, it's easy to miss subtle changes and problems in the product flow. Is it ever okay to stop thinking? Our panel today includes Jeremy Berrio, Jeremy Willets, John M. Cagley, and Freddie Clark, and of course myself. Hey, before we dive into the panel discussion, remember, Mastering Work Intake sponsors the Software Process and Measurement Cast. Starting everything means finishing nothing. Poor work entry means delivering less. This matters because work intake controls what a team works on and when they work on it. Overloaded teams deliver less value. Poor prioritization leads to delivering the wrong work. Chaotic work intake costs organizations money and time. Mastering Work Intake by Jeremy Willets and Tom Cagley provides the reader with ideas, principles, and actionable advice, worksheets, and examples to deliver more value. Link in the show notes to buy a copy or run out to Amazon or J. Ross Publishing and look up Mastering Work Intake. Jeremy Willets, John Cagley, Jeremy Berrio. Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast panel discussion. Gentlemen, we just listened to behavioral economist Dan Ariely talk about the difference between rituals and habits. Habits, something that we do automatically, we don't think very deeply about, it just happens, right? We all know how to tie our shoes. Well, I don't know, maybe Berrio doesn't. Of course he does. But none of us think about that. But once upon a time, we probably all learned how to tie our shoes. Maybe we did the rabbit approach where you created a ritual so that you knew how to put it together and you thought deeply about it every time you did it. Now it not so much. But we all live in the process improvement world, whether it's lean, whether it's agile, whether it's something else. We're all about process improvement. Making things habits sounds like it would be the right thing to do. I'd like to lay out a hypothesis that we would really like to make things into rituals, well, without making them, religious or things like that, so that people did spend more time and effort thinking about it, so that they, did it well. And, that's my hypothesis. What do y'all think?
I mean, my initial reaction to the video when I watched this morning was, this sounds a lot like Daniel Kahneman's System 1 thinking, System 2 thinking.
Oh, heck yes.
Thinking fast and slow. And so I immediately was like, wow, that's what a great connection that is. And in that material, he talks a lot about how System 1 is exactly what you said, Tom, is tying your shoe, behaviors like that you just don't have to think about a lot. But then when System 2 kicks in, you start to do a lot more deep thought, a lot more potential engagement with the topic. Certainly there's any number of diversions and paths you can take with System 2 thinking, but that was my initial reaction to the video.
I have a little less connected to that. I noted that when I think I kind of go, I've been bowling since I was probably 15, 14, somewhere like that. I just recently started back. And I notice when I'm thinking about what I'm doing, that my game goes to wherever you think it would go. Not great. But when I'm just fluidly moving, everything works out right. And I'm asked, what did you do different? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what I did. I just went through the motions. And then one other observation. I've been playing a bass longer than I've been bowling. And somebody's asking me how a particular part goes in a particular song that I know and have known since probably the 70s, late 70s. And I'm like, I don't know. And I grabbed my bass and I could play it. I don't know what that's called, but I couldn't tell him the notes. I couldn't tell him anything about it other than, I have played it. I know how to play it. I had to pick up my bass and then play it, and then I'd look at where the frets were and where the notes are. So some of that conditioning, the habit, puts you in a condition where I guess you're kind of on autopilot, and that's a good thing for some things, and not a good thing for something as dynamic as a work environment where everything we're doing essentially the same project we did before, but it's not in everything else other than maybe a thematic scope and cost constraints and maybe apportionment of resources.
Gentlemen, and I'm sorry for taking you out of the flow here. I'd like to introduce Freddie Clark, who has joined us. Freddie, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, Freddie.
Freddie and Jeremy and I all worked together once upon a time. So Freddie is a product manager these days, or a product owner? What would you call yourself these days?
I would say, because I'm at a startup, blend of both, but official title is product owner.
Okay, super. Okay, so Jeremy B., thoughts on the habit and ritual conversation?
Well, at first listening to it, obviously, like the whole, you mentioned it before, like kind of religious undertones kind of came out. It's like, ugh. But listening more into it, it was, I had to laugh because, yeah, habits are so, for me, are just so like, yeah, I tie my shoes. Yes, I do this. But it's actually makes my brain go a little kind of off in the distance because I teach jujitsu in the morning, so I have to open up the club and I have to lock it up when I leave. There have been a few times already where I'm halfway home and I'm like, did I lock the door? And I turn around, come back, and I wiggle the door. It's like, yep, it's locked. Okay, and go away.
Of course, the day that you don't go back, what's going to be happening, right?
Oh, that'll never happen because I'll always go back. Maybe I'll go talk to a psychologist about that part. But the actual ritual part and thinking through it, and as you mentioned, that kind of continuous improvement, the stuff that we all do ourselves. It's something that you need to. I've seen too many teams, so they'll do the retrospective and like, yep, okay, just kind of rubber stamp it. Yeah, we'll do better, blah, 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 blah. And then half an hour later, after they had their afternoon coffee or their morning coffee, they forget everything they talked about and they just keep doing it. So they get into that habit of like just kind of almost cargo cultism, just kind of just going through the motions, not doing anything.
That's essentially a ritual kind of thing. Ritualistic is a thing that we do out of something, maybe not a habit, but it is something that's akin to an autopilot. These are the steps, period.
I think that is a habit versus necessarily a deep thought or ritual.
Right. The thought isn't there in the example that Jeremy B gave. And I've seen that example too, where a team falls into a habit of whether it's retrospective or one of the other Scrum events or a safe event or even something completely different. They fall into the habit of knowing I have to go here and do this particular thing. And again, brains on autopilot. They aren't thinking about the quality of that particular interaction with a group of people and
just get it done.
Yeah.
Or even the necessity. That's the other part I've seen is that we're going to do this step. But, this step may not even apply in this particular thing. It's a hurdle that's unnecessary. It accomplishes nothing positive for whatever we're working on. I think either one of these started to look like check your brain at the door a little bit. Maybe.
No, I guess I don't think the ritual does. But Freddie,
yeah, it's super interesting because I think habits and rituals are super intertwined. They're very much two connective muscles. You start with a ritual that becomes a habit, and over time, that habit, as a human being, we love to simplify things. So that habit becomes simpler and simpler. Thinking about my days playing sports, basketball, stretching was a ritual that became a habit outside of the bounds of just playing basketball. My mind made it up that I can't move without stretching, but I got lazy about it. And that's what you're referring to in retrospectives is you typically human beings will love to just start with the ritual, make it become a habit, and then simplify it. And at that point, it's lost that innovation, that invigoration that the ritual initially introduced. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's lost the joy was the word that came to my mind when you were describing that, Freddie. It's like when something moves from ritual to habit, it might lose a little bit of joy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might lose I don't know about the joy, probably, but I certainly think you lose something of the adaptability. In both cases, we're talking about in habit, your mind's on autopilot. You're not even thinking about it. In ritual, as we've been described here, you have thought about it at one point in time. At one point in time, you have thought these are the steps. Here's how I'm going to evaluate wine. And that's it. And things are too dynamic to start with either one of those as being the foundation of anything. The world is too dynamic. Our workspace is too dynamic. Technology is,
I hear you, John, but I think, again, let's go back, and one of the stipulations that Ariely pointed out is that it's a matter of forcing deep thought as you do it in all cases. So as soon as you stop thinking about it as you're doing it deeply, then it is a habit at that point. And I think Jeremy W. did point out the system 1-2 thinking. By the way, if you I highly recommend Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow book. I think it was right after he won the Nobel Prize, or maybe this was the book that got him the Nobel Prize. I'm not 100% sure which came first, the egg or the chicken. But there is actually these two work together, Kahneman and Ariely, because the whole accident with his face and all that kind of thing is described in the book, because what ended up happening, right, in Ariely's point, was that he went. It was habit that ended up helping him not see something in his work. He should have been deemed thinking. He should have been system 2 thinking, because then he spent 2 years in the hospital after it blew up and burned him all over. He is IDF kind of stuff, Israeli Defense Force. But regardless, how do we get people?
I got a question.
Go.
Can I interject for a second, Tom? Because I have a question. How do we, so at the beginning of a ritual, we have, in his description of the wine, we have a set of steps that we're doing to appreciate the wine. In my case, maybe it'd be more like moonshine, but okay. Whatever your beverage of choice is, you're taking some time to really take in the thing that you're in ingest or observing. At what point does this turn into a set of steps non-modifiable? When I think of ritual,
that's habit.
I'm not so sure that the church has rituals, right? If we look at one interpretation of these things, the church has ritual. I'm not Catholic, but even the ones I've gone to, they have a certain set of rituals. I don't know that we're thinking about how the things should be done differently.
I think the pace aspect of it is what resonated with me on the second listening to this video. Like, I don't remember how many times Dan Ariely used the word slow in the video, but
Slow
it
down,
seemed like it was quite a bit. And so I guess the connection that I made the second time watching it was that habit was fast and automatic, and the ritual was like slow and deliberate, which allowed for that thought to occur.
So for me, like I said, I'm jiu-jitsu. I compete a lot, except for the past few months due to injury. But when I'm on the mat and I'm competing and I'm fighting against someone that's 300 pounds, 200 pounds, whatever the weight division I'm in, that I can't, to your point, sorry, I don't have my glasses on, John. Forgot the name. But to your point, like where you're just doing stuff automatically with your base, I have to do almost everything automatic when I compete. And Most of the times it works. Some of the times I get squished or I get injured. Something happens. That's all part of the game.
Yep.
But I then go into the ritual part afterwards and figure out, okay, what did I do wrong? What happened? And start drilling and almost being ritualistic on going through my move set, and then understanding the position of the body, understanding the weight, where the push is, where everything else is. And then I allow that turns into habit, so that when I feel pressure in one certain direction, I automatically do that. I turn that into that's my habit where I succeed. So if we look at it as from a team perspective, you want them to be ritualistic for continuous improvement, to really kind of get through and get things going and start working through until it becomes habit. But they also have to be cognizant of, hey, this is not the silver bullet, the golden charm that's going to get us to work more productive and be more efficient from here to the end of time. We have to get back into the ritual of becoming better at what we do, and not getting kind of stop when something stops us, or when the pressure turns into stress. If we want to use from the book Relentless, we want to be able to understand where that happens and how to start making those changes, so then we can get back on track.
I'm going to put an example. Have all of us worked in a Scrum type environment where you did some form of a daily meeting? Yeah, I see lots of head nods. Okay, so that daily meeting, how many of you believe that it's a habit that everybody just does, checks the box, and doesn't think very much about? And then what happens if that's true?
I think the depending actions are probably less than great post that meeting.
Mm-hmm. I think it is very habitual, especially if it feels enforced. Like, you have to be there in certain environments. And what I find entertaining is that it spawned the ritual of, can we make it faster? Can we get this done quicker? I think we have a speed run leaderboard on my team for daily stand-ups. So I think that's really it is. It's an enforced habit, which I think falls out a little bit outside of the bounds of Ben's video, but it is something that, he was speaking towards with rituals, is enforcing a ritual to start that thinking process.
But I do think that it's been a long time since I've worked with a new team that was new to Scrum. But I think my recollection of doing that long ago was the first time you would do a daily meeting, a stand-up, it felt more ritualistic because it was slower, it was more deliberate, it required some coaching on behalf of the Scrum Master to the rest of the team.
And they might have actually thought about what they were going to say versus...
Exactly.
I did these things.
I vividly remember people being nervous at stand-up. Like, they would come to stand-up not sure of what they were going to say because they were like concerned about saying the wrong thing, afraid to talk in front of people. A lot of people on engineering teams can be introverted in general and maybe not be comfortable getting up in front of a group of even their peers and saying, here's what I worked on yesterday, here's what I plan to do today, here are the challenges I'm facing.
I thought it also, when for me, the times I've done it, it's never been where a clock was running to, get out of here in 15 minutes. I mean, we all were aware that we don't need to be in here long doing this, but there was no, he or she who gets out fastest is the winner. That wasn't a thing, which meant we could spend some time even talking about what the depending things need to happen. Here's something that's popping up. Okay, what's the next move? What do we need to do to combat this or confront this or overcome this or just the next step, period? So that we're all starting to get in on the page, even when it comes to the same page when it comes to the workflow. I think we do ourselves harm. You're looking at the pace aspect of this thing. I think we do ourselves harm when we just try to rush through these things.
I think you're proving the Ariely point. You're forcing it back to ritual, where you think deeply about what you're doing, versus this is just a habit. Let's check the boxes and and a cloud of dust and let's go. I mean,
have you ever been in a meeting where the checklist, they were just going through it like this, and you're like, what's the metric behind that? How do we actually know the thing that you're saying is in fact the thing, and we're not looking at confirmation bias or some delusion?
But the ritual, the habit is we do this daily thing every morning. We answer, because people have not ever read the current version of the Scrum Guide. We have to answer the 3 frickin' questions. And
no more. Just that.
More.
And go around the room, and then maybe we have follow-on meetings afterwards, or as our friend Ben Woznicki says, let's have a study hall afterwards. But we do that, and we check the box, and it's a cloud of dust, and it's gone, and we all walk away happy because it was the habit until we decide we don't like meetings and we get rid of them.
Well, like for me, the 2 teams that I worked with a couple years ago, they were new to Scrum before I came in. They turned themselves, I'll use air quotes for this one. They turned themselves into Scrum teams, I think 2 months before I came in to help. And their daily stand-up, they had scheduled for 15 minutes. First couple weeks I was there, they would last at least an hour. It was so mind-numbing, and it drove me bonkers, because initially I said, okay, well, I'll observe, I'll see what you guys are doing and walk through, so see what I can do for coaching. And within like the first couple weeks, like I would press them a little bit. It's like, hey, this seems like a solution that you guys are trying to solve. How about you 2 go off and everyone else is, and also this was a Scrum team of 15 people. So that was also fun. But I would kind of point out and push them. Okay, how about you take this off? Like, you 2 are doing all the talking. You guys go offline. You guys can take that. And eventually it got to the point where it was really, we got it down to 15 minutes and sometimes even less, because now is directing. It's like, hey, if there's only 2 people talking, you don't need a collective intelligence to come up with a solution, because they're the ones that need to come up with it. You guys go away. But there were times where we did have to work as a team. And to John's point, where we just kind of, all right, let's work through this real quick so we can get everything else done. Or we understand that if this is the last thing we do, okay, let's focus the next 10 minutes. Or if not, then we'll have to figure something else afterwards. But that first couple weeks where there was like 1 hour stand-ups, it was.
So let's just pick on 1 hour stand-ups just for a minute, just because I had a 1 hour meeting with.
You stepped in it, Jeremy.
I know.
No. I agree with Mr. Barrio. I mean, those are. I think I'd rather have a root canal without Novocaine than do those.
I don't know. At the beginning, that might make some sense, especially with a 15-person team.
So 15 people. 50. No, you don't have to start there. 15 people and a consultant. What the heck do you think that meeting costs?
Oh yeah, about
it's expensive.
$1,500 at least. Probably higher than that.
Oh, well, I mean, it's in essence.
I use $100 an hour as a rule of thumb when I'm thinking about these things.
Oh, well, you're cheap, dude.
It's a little low. I get it.
Yeah, you're cheap, dude. Just saying.
I didn't say that's what I cost. I say just as a rule.
Yeah. Well, load that in. Put like overhead and healthcare and regardless. That's if nothing else. That in essence is 2 full-time equivalent days of effort, right? Yeah. I mean that's a whole other user story.
Every day.
Excellent.
And about 90% of the people are probably there. They say their bit and they're done. But
they turn off their camera and they do their frickin' email.
Well, turn off that'd mean that they turned on their camera.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. So again,
way to represent Canada.
I mean,
me.
Yeah.
That is you.
Freddie, what's a way that you would help people or suggest to people to think more deeply about something that's an ingrained habit that they're not thinking about and just using to check the box?
That's a great question. It's actually very interesting because, like, when I'm listening and observing this conversation, when I mentioned that we speed run our the habit or the ritual of a stand up, it got the reaction of, well, kind of like, you know, there should be more there. But for my team, who have all come from Scrum backgrounds, at least 2 to 3 years of experience, that meeting, the habit, it was to just showing up. The ritual was to get through it quickly, but it got my team over time to have the to get to the point. I would say a lot of engineers struggle to get to the point. They get poignantly to, I need this person, I need that person because I want to accomplish this. And that spurns those branching off points of deeper discussion and conversations in that time span. And I've noticed that those conversations have become more ingrained, more thoughtful when they feel like, well, I don't have to engage with that thing anymore. I just needed to be here in order to get what I need. And then spurn into a deeper, thoughtful discussion afterwards.
Okay. John, how would you get people to get to that deeper side?
Wow, so that is a good question. I'm really good at asking questions, better than answering them, Tom. and I think that's the role of a Scrum Master at large, anyway, or anybody who's in product development, working with a team, and they're in, I don't want to use the word leadership role, but in a coordinating kind of leadership role, project management role, whatever you want to call that person. So part of it is asking those questions, those follow-on questions from those three inane questions that we're essentially obligated to say.
We're not obligated.
Well, how about this? Many think that's the obligation.
Okay.
That's better.
That's fair.
Yeah. If you distill it down, some folks think that's what this is all about, but that's not really what it's all about. But those follow-on questions to any one of the answers to the baseline questions, whatever that might look like, are the part that engages the team. And here's the other part about those stand-up meetings that I think we might forget. It's true. We don't want to waste any time here. That's an absolute fact. But the reality is, this is also a point for our team to work together collectively to really bring their problem areas to the surface, the things that are impeding us, the opportunities that might present, and then dogpile on that to resolve or to capitalize on it, depending on whichever whether there's an opportunity or not, or it's a trauma coming our way. I think we do, again, we're trying to get through this fast because meetings are a waste, but we do ourselves a disservice when we try to get through them maybe a little too quick under certain circumstances.
I can't argue with any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Which Jeremy wants to go next? Okay.
Oh, I guess I'll go. So one of the things, and this is something I've been focused on for probably the last 3 years now, is on understanding going back to my psychology degree from way back when, on understanding the behaviors and communication styles of everyone and how they communicate, how they take in information, and how they provide that information. Because you could find, yes, some developers are introverts or even the extroverts. The extroverts sound like they are complete and utter jerks, but they're not trying to be. They don't want to be jerks. It's just how they portray themselves and how they give out that information. And if you have other individuals that take in that information or how to communicate, and they communicate differently, then that's where you get, I feel, a lot of kind of issues within the teams. That's where you get your silos, because they're just not.
Today I want to talk about habits and rituals. So,
sorry.
So yes, but I find that now the teams that I work with, when I dig in and start understanding everyone as an individual and from their behaviors and how they deal with stress, how they deal with communication, what types of communication they like, what types of messages they like, then it's easier for me to share and get the team to get on board to have that same understanding. And once they have that, then everything's kind of off to the races for that. And then when you get into those rituals and the habits and getting into that kind of ethos of being agile, then they have that joy of making things better, because once they understand all that and they start working on the processes and they have their empowerment, then they're making their work life better. So they come into work happy and they leave work happy.
I'm listening to this conversation, and the opinion that I have, Tom, is something that I think comes from one of the Stoic books that I've read about. You need to evaluate your habits constantly. Why have they become habits?
Yep.
What is the value you're still getting from that habit? Does that habit align with your principles? I think all of that applies to the workplace and your personal life.
There are things, though, that are within our control in the workplace, and there are those that are outside of our control. So I think we've wrestled with different ways to think about the whole idea of habits and rituals. Getting rid of the words, can we all agree that thinking about what we're doing, especially when we're in the workplace, is generally a pretty good idea?
I'd like to see the person say no. Because I would ask them to justify that.
Well, I was sort of hoping somebody would, and we could ask them to justify it.
I'm a contrarian, but I'm sorry, I can't play this game. I've seen too many bad things happen by checking the brain at the door events that are been painful. There's no way I'm going to sign on to that.
Cool.
I could play devil's junior advocate here.
All right, play on, Mr. Clark.
Go ahead, Freddie.
I would say it depends. It depends, especially if you think in the context
you have
of
been
our
a consultant before. I can tell. As a matter of fact, I know you have, but that's okay. It depends. Play on.
Yeah, so it's to me, everything is contextual. Certain things are fine to be habits. In some of my things that are like my daily routines or responsibilities of myself, some of them I don't need to have my brain on to perform that action. Something that's very simple, like setting up meetings and all of that. I don't need deeper thought. I don't need to enforce that in my team. But it is contextually, I say, like when it comes to something around like more complex lines of communications, like cooperative meetings and things of that nature, how we communicate, how we discuss, that's where you drive that ritual. And I think Jeremy B brought up a great point of different people have different dynamics to how they can successfully collaborate. You have that introvert that does not like to be in a public forum, but is a great contributor asynchronously. You have those capabilities of trying to form rituals around those more complex systems. I think makes a lot of sense, but there are some things that can be left to be habitual and actually make your work easier, better. Like some of the things that I've automated in my day-to-day life have definitely made my life a lot easier to put time towards the growth and building of those different rituals that I need in order for my teams to be successful.
I would dogpile on Freddie here a little bit. I think it occurred to me when he was talking, there are times when you do not want everybody's brain functioning on a particular product or problem. And that would be when you're in the dire circumstances, dire straits. What are your dire straits? One of my favorite bands. When you're in these circumstances, you don't need a lot of debate. You really need a single kind of decision made and a push in that direction. It may be wrong. You may find out you're altogether wrong, but emergency sort of things, traumatic events kind of preclude a lot of consensus that can preclude a lot of consensus development sort of thing. And somebody has to take the bull by the horns and everybody else kind of step and fetch to another pace. That's not an unreasonable thing in certain circumstances.
I think I agree that there are some circumstances. I'm not 100% sure I buy yours, John, but I most certainly agree that it should be habit to lock your screen when you walk away from your laptop in an office environment, and things like that. So I buy that you have to think through what circumstances it makes sense in and what circumstance it doesn't make sense in. I'm not 100% sure I would put my money on it being most things being habitual. I'd say most things probably should be more ritualistic. But that's me.
When I think about product development large, I'm probably look at that from a ritualistic thing. I know when I think about the steps, I think about these various compartments. I say compartments because there's a hyper focus on a certain thing during that event. But I think about that in the context of the future pieces, right? These things are all connected. It's a pipeline. You and Jeremy know this because you wrote the whole workflow thing, which is part of is an articulation of that.
Gentlemen, thank you for spending an afternoon or a chunk of the afternoon. Obviously, I'm going to explore why the ICS that went to Mr. Willets went at a different time, and perhaps that's where some of our other folks were. But again, thank you for your thoughtful, ritualistic, System 2 kind of thinking in terms of a discussion of habits and rituals. Thank you again. The next Software Process and Measurement Cast, fix your organization's operating system first. Fix your organization before you try to fix teams. People work in the system that management created. Management has to own the fix. Remember, the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 871 will be posted on July 20th. For the summer of 2025, we'll drop bi-weekly and focus on panel discussions. If you want to participate, we're always interested in new voices. Email me at spamcastinfo@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your voice. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?